welcome to Daily Debrief brought to you by People's Dispatch. I'm Pragya. 2023 may become the year COVID-19 throws up new challenges. The focus on China ending the zero COVID policy may seem more of the same, but are new challenges emerging from new variants, not from China. We look at some important factors in this case today. Last October, Filipino radio journalist Percy Lapid was shot dead in Manila. The case shook up the Philippines and an investigation ensued. There have been sensational claims and discoveries in this case. We get an update on the latest today. China ended its zero COVID policy this year. As expected, the cases of infections by the Omicron variant of the SARS-CoV-2 virus are zooming up. But is the variant of Omicron emerging in the country the most concerning variant around in the world today? As also, it seems evident that COVID-19 could throw up surprises in 2023. What could those surprises be? We spoke to Prabir Purkayastha about the risks to the world from COVID this year. Prabir, welcome to Debrief. Prabir, so we're back to talking about COVID-19 and in the context of the new variants. Which are the variants of concern that we know about? Where are they coming from?
Well, I think Eric Topol coined a very nice term. There are variants and there are scariants.
Right.
Scariants are those which are look at various variants and scare you, but they really are not that important in the scheme of things. They're not going to cause large outbreaks. There are variants of concern where we need to really think about, okay, this might cause a new wave. Might. So this is where, when you talk about variants, you have to be clear. There are a number of variants which are there appearing continuously all the time.
Okay.
So therefore, we wouldn't really be bothered too much about new variants per se. But if some of them start taking off, then we need to think about, okay, can it cause another wave? Like we had the COVID wave, then we had the Delta wave, then we had Omicron waves. So
right.
Can it cause a new Omicron wave? Because now what we see are all at the moment Omicron variants. So one of the things that we have to really think about is that which country are we talking about? At the moment, there is apparently in New York, northeast of United States, the XBB 1.5. This seems to be the new variant which has done a fair amount of new infections created. It's become the dominant variant within about 2 to 3 weeks in the United States now. So it seems to be out-competing with other fellow Omicron variants.
Okay.
So this is always a competition between variants, which
right.
will be the dominant, plus how many will infect us. So that's, of course, also the other part of the equation. So as of now, yes, we have to watch that does the XBB 1.5, which is also, apparently we have genomics testing shows we have the samples in India, but doesn't seem to have caused any major outbreaks as yet that we can see. So as of now, I would say for India, we don't really need to think too much about it, because these variants which are being talked of, all of them are there, have been tested and found here. People come in from the United States.
All the time.
All the time. So obviously they are there in our midst. And post the large Omicron wave that we had, I think we had more than one here in that sense.
Right.
I don't think that we are seeing any marked rise in any part of the country. We will first see a cluster of cases. We'll probably see a cluster of cases in certain places. And then we have to track, okay, this is something which is important, we need to see that. But let's also look at it this way, that when such variants do arise, that once they become dominant in one country, then they tend to replicate in other countries as well.
Okay.
So we have to see what happens. Is it only Northeast United States, or does it spread to the whole of the United States? If it spreads to even 1/3, 1/4 of the United States, it will definitely then also spread to Europe. Then what happens? All these things we'll have to wait and watch. But as of now, in India or in Africa or probably in Latin America, we are not seeing that many new cases coming out from the US variant. I'm calling it US variant, which is a wrong nomenclature because then it becomes the China variant, US variant, India variant,
Indeed,
and
yes.
so on. So the other thing, of course, is the China, because China has this BF.7 variant, which is a variant which is closer to the original Omicron bifurcation from the other COVID SARS-CoV-2 viruses. So if you look at that, it's not as far down in terms of genetic distance, how different it is from the original Omicron seed, so to say, as the XBB 1.5 is.
Okay.
So that's why the greater concern with XBB 1.5. Plus, it seems to have better immune escape properties. It seems to also infect more people. Transmissibility is greater. So some of those things are there in XBB 1.5, which people are really concerned about. We don't see that with BF7 from what the scientific community is telling us, that it is that with the genetic distances between the original Omicron variant and this subvariant is not that significantly different, which it is in the case of the other later Omicron variants we talked about. So that seems to be what we are seeing at the moment. As far as most of the world is concerned, I think we need to take account of all this when we see something happening. As yet, fingers crossed, but wait and watch.
So the less different a variant is, the more likely that the immunity that people have either from vaccine or by getting infected is more effective.
That is correct, that even if you do get infected, you will probably get a minor infection.
Okay.
And it's not going to be a serious infection. That is one major issue. You see, at the moment, what we really are concerned about is what's the hospitalization rates. If the number of infections are high, but along with it, the number of hospitalization is also high, then it is something to worry about, because then we can get into the Delta situation we had all over the world.
Right.
But the hospital systems collapsed and we didn't have enough oxygen. That's what also started the COVID-19 pandemic, if you remember.
Absolutely.
That's large-scale collapse of the hospitals in Europe and the United States. That is what we saw. So we have to really see not just how many people are getting infected, but how many people out of that are getting seriously infected. The really in public health terms, the second is the more important criteria.
Right.
That if a very large number are falling sick, but mild 1 day, 2 days, 5 days, don't have to worry about that so much. Yes, of
Okay.
course. It's all COVID is something to worry about because there is long COVID and so many other things. So leaving that part of it out, and there is a significant percentage of people who seem to have longer term symptoms of COVID than the 5-day fever might suggest. So yes, that is one of the after effects, but it does not stress the system as much as the system would be stressed if the infections become serious.
Absolutely.
So what you are saying is right. There are two things that have happened. One is that we are much better prepared. Our bodies are much better prepared because most of us had 2 vaccine shots. We probably, some of us older people have 3, including that a booster shot. So we have that. Plus, in the last 3 years, once or twice we have got the infection as well.
True.
So what is being called hybrid immunity, though is a term which may it be itself a little suspect because it's not the immunity that is there, it's that we have got really infected and we have antibodies. So it's not that the immunity is hybrid, it's that we have got multiple vaccines and infections and has given us more immunity than just by vaccines might have given us, or just simply infections might have given us. So that is what for some time it will protect us. How long? Probably every year we might be required to take, for at least those who are immune compromised, the older people probably need to take, we take flu shots, also take COVID shots. But we have to see that the COVID shots then use the current generation of variants, not the ancestral 2020 variant, which is what a lot of the vaccines are based on.
Okay.
So the other issue is how do we replenish what the vaccines are supposed to be based on, because it's really what we do every year in influenza vaccines.
Right.
We change We see what is the variants which are there. Based on that, we tweak the vaccine to reflect the current set of infections that are there. Take those seeds, so to say, and build the vaccines on that. So how do you do that to see that it has more variants built into the vaccine so that we get a broader immunity? I think that's one of the challenges which Dr. Rath was talking to us the other day.
That's right.
He was touching upon this. So I think those are there. So I would say that, yes, for the time being, as I said, COVID has brought in surprises. So let's not think that 2 years surprise is over. So we might get new surprises this year again. But as of now, for most of the world, wait and watch, see what happens to United States and how serious the COVID-19 scenario develops over there. As of now, some watching what happens, but I think more or less at the moment nothing to worry about in most parts of the world.
Thanks a lot for joining us. Percival Karag Mabasa was a well-known radio journalist and broadcaster in the Philippines until he was shot dead last year. He was a critic of the Marcos Duterte regimes that have governed the country in recent years. His work opened to question some practices like red tagging of activists by branding them as communist, a disturbing trend in the country. 2 motorcycle-borne killers shot him dead on October 3, 2022. We talked to Anish from People's Dispatch about some of the latest discoveries and allegations in this case. Anish, thanks for joining us. Anish, the October 2022 assassination, a probe started immediately. But can you tell us what we have found in all this time that has passed, where the investigation is right now?
Well, right now the investigation has pretty much reached the Marcos administration itself with the latest allegation coming from the now suspended Bureau of Corrections chief, who filed a complaint on earlier this week, alleging that the Secretary of Justice himself was the one who is the mastermind behind not just Lapid's killing, but also the killing of Lapid's the person who actually put out the quotation against Lapid in the Bilibid jail. So these 2 murders that have happened in so far have actually been blamed on Rumelo, who's now the Secretary of Justice, and also who's a longtime ally of Marcos Jr. So since his days during the presidential election campaign, so this is a long-term ally that we're talking about. So this is getting murkier. The allegations, we do not know how far it will go because the suspended Bureau of Corrections chief himself is going through an investigation of ordering the death of the inmate that actually ordered the killing, the assassin, or at least who's being held as a suspect in the killing of ordering for the killing of Percy Lapid. So obviously, we have to also talk about the killing of the person who ordered it, because right after he was named as one of the suspects, he was reported as dead in the prison. And the first 2 postmortem reports actually claimed that it was all natural causes, and later a parallel postmortem actually revealed that he was suffocated to death. So, which shows that there are powerful people right now involved in this matter. So obviously, the Bureau of Corrections chief was the first head to roll, and but with the new allegations, we are not very sure if the buck stops with him, and if it goes further ahead into the Marcos administration, which wouldn't be surprising, because from the Bureau of Corrections chief to to President Marcos himself, there are powerful people that have been criticized very roundly by Percy Lapid throughout his reporting career. He has called them out for each of them for their policy decisions, their abuses of human rights, and other forms of violations in their place of authority. So this really just makes muddies all the water right now, but also shows was something that human rights organizations have always suspected, that these murders, these assassinations, are not something that is done by some right-wing vigilantes. These are planned murders that happen with the state, with power, with police, being hand in hand with criminal elements within the society, and also many of whom are involved in the so-called drug industry as well, despite the government's war on drugs. So it is a whole nexus that is working, playing out right now, which is being unraveled after this, through this investigation.
Right, Anish. So now, can you talk a bit about his journalism? What kind of work he did, and who were the people whom he criticized? What were the issues he raised? And are there people who feel that there is a connection between his sudden killing and what he did?
Well, obviously, the fact that he was killed just barely 2 months after Marcos Jr. took power was something that everybody suspected was a massive foul play. It doesn't help with the fact that he has been an ardent critique of not just the Duterte administration that came before Marcos Jr.'s, but also Marcos Jr. himself, even before he became the president, and the Marcos family. So he has been someone who has who has a long history of reporting on human rights abuses in the name of the war on drugs that have happened, in the name of the anti-insurgency efforts of the government that have often bled into, very literally so, into the civil society, where often civil society organizers, trade unionists, human rights activists have been targeted, including church leaders in some cases, have been targeted, arrested, red tagged, as you pointed out, in several cases, which he has brought out a whole host of exposes in many of his reportings, and have reported from the ground in most cases. He has been reporting stuff that most mainstream media in the Philippines do not really, engage with. Even if they do with small sort of wire copies, and they do not really give us the whole story. Many of the times they do not, follow up on these stories. So he has been someone who did that, and he did that while also garnering a massive viewership. He's somebody who had about 400,000 subscribers for his YouTube channel at the time of his death, which shows that in a country like Philippines, that shows that, and especially for somebody who's reporting in Tagalog, this shows that he was definitely somebody who was quite popular in the alternative media space. So Lapid's death, that is the reason why when Lapid was murdered, there was this massive outcry, and there was this need, the pressure that built up on the administration, that the administration had to initiate a serious investigation that actually led to the kind of unraveling that we're seeing right now. What happens with the investigation is a different question, because very often we have seen in the past, journalists, when they get killed, it's not just journalists, it's also human rights activists, trade unionists, all sorts of them who have been red tagged and then attacked or killed in police raids and so on. Their investigations just go into cold waters. There's nothing happens on those fronts. Very rarely you have like one police officer being charged and convicted. It's a very big rarity in the Philippines right now. So in these cases, we do not know how things will, despite the kind of publicity that they garner. But obviously, nothing has come close to the kind of publicity that Lapid's death actually did, take attention, like the kind of attention that it grabbed in the public's eye, definitely means that the powers that be cannot be just silent and wish it away, like they did with other murders and assassinations. So obviously, we need to wait and see how things unfold in the courts, and if these the kind of allegations that have been made with the Marcos administration actually holds water in the court. But definitely, it, as I said, it actually just exposes a whole host of myths that are quite popular in the Philippines about how assassinations happen, why these assassinations happen, often seen as sort of reaction to the criticism of the government. But right now we see that these are quite clearly very planned attacks on the critics of the government and the government's policies.
Right, Anish, and thanks a lot for joining us. And that's all we have for you today. Thank you for watching Daily Debrief. We'll return on Monday with a new episode. Until then, visit our website, peoplesdispatch.org, for stories like these and our regular updates, as always, on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.